We have a request that if you are able, if you are so inclined, that you will come as close to the front. I was asked if I could ask you that, if I felt okay asking you about coming. I said, well, we have to do it in church all the time. Because in the Episcopal church where I attend, we always fill the church up from the back. So you have to ask them to come on down. So come on down, if you will, so we can create that spirit of intimacy here. Welcome. My name is Kathy Colmer. I live in Houston, and I'm glad to be your MC for this session, this first session with the featured storytellers. So welcome again. Some of you already been welcomed to the 41st Annual Texas Storytelling Festival. Let's hear it. Give yourselves a hand. A hand for getting up and for being here at this time. Whatever your taste in telling, you're bound to get a heaping serving here. Hope you brought your appetite. Yeah, you got it? You're sure to get a filling with room just for a little bit more. There was this guy that I used to know, and he said he loved to eat. He would just, and what he considered was a good meal where you just eat and eat and eat until you get full, and then you burp, and you can eat a little bit more. So that's what we hope you'll get to do here. Hear the stories, enjoy the stories, laugh, cry, think, feel, until you've had your fill, with room for just a little bit more. Just so you will know this, the concerts are being recorded, not only the tellers, but the audience as well, to get your reactions. So if you don't want to be in the recording, then you may want to sit on the ends. I was told to tell you that. We want to thank our sponsors, the folk who make this all happen. You've already heard about some of them, the Texas Folklore Society and the National Endowment from the Arts. We'll be thanking our sponsors throughout the concert. Want to remind you to do this. Turn off your cell phones. When I'm at the Biblical Storytelling Festival, we say, turn off your cell phones, and the audience responds, we turn them off for the Lord. Here you might say, we turn them off for the stories. So turn off your cell phones. We turn them off for the stories. All right, give yourselves a hand. Now y'all ready? Introducing Joel Hill, who will be signing for us. Joel has been here for almost as long as the Texas Storytelling Festival. So many of you may know him already. We thank you, Joel, and we admire you for the work that you do. Will Libby be joining him? Libby Street will be here as well to sign for us. So if we're ready, let's get ready. Gather round now. Gather round now. Gather round now. Gather round now. Come and hear the stories. 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 Hear about the old ones and learn about the new ones. Hear about the old ones and learn about the new ones. Gather round now. Gather round now. Gather round now. Gather round now. Listen to the stories. Listen to the stories. Listen to the stories. Listen to the stories. It's storytelling time now. It's storytelling time. It's storytelling time now. Storytelling time now. It's storytelling time now. Storytelling time now. It's storytelling time now. It's storytelling time. All right. First up, On the menu, our first teller is Joel Ben Izzy, who comes to us from Berkeley, California. Yeah. It was back in 1983, nearly half a century ago, and those are his words, that he set off to travel the world in search of stories, and he's been searching and finding ever since. While on the journey, Joel has gathered and shared tales in 36 countries across North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. When asked what he wanted to make sure I included in my introduction of him, he said, some of what I just said to you. And then he added, if it's already been said in the bio, then just tell them that I'm taller than I look. When asked to complete the statement, what I know for sure about storytelling, Joel answered that while some of us on stage are the ones telling stories now, absolutely everyone has got stories to tell, and we're going to find them. As to what's been said about Joel, it's been said Joel Ben Izzy is fantastic. What a gift, what a blessing, bright, funny, and wise. To get us started and bring us what he says will be some story appetizers, let us welcome to the stage Joel Ben Izzy.
Thank you, Kathy, for that lovely introduction. I wrote it myself, and let's see. Thank you, Joel. I love that name, Joel Hill. I love that name. Hey, folks, how y'all doing? I got to say, this is the warmest welcome I've ever had to a festival. It started long before I got here, and I have just had the best time. And I'm honored to be able to sort of kick off the presenters' concert here. And there's a lot happening this weekend. A lot of stories. I looked at that program. So I thought I would just play the role of appetizers or hors d'oeuvres, or I think the pronunciation is horse divers. Is that right? So to help get because you can take in stories, you want to be sort of prepared and develop that taste, and that's what appetizers do. So I thought some little stories to help you find some more, and also to fill up these empty chairs, right? There's always empty chairs. We're going to be filling them up in this section. You'll see how that works in a minute. My approach to storytelling, I rely on 3 street signs that I always used to notice when I was a kid. And I'll just point them out to you. You've seen them before, and I'll tell you sort of what they mean in storytelling. One is it's a sign you might just see somewhere where you look at a map that says, "You are here." You know that? When I see that, I think, oh, that's good. It's good to just remember you are here. And in storytelling, you start right where you are. You are here. Then there was another one we'd go by, and we would, when we drive it, past it, we would always see it and then turn to my mom and wait for what she said, because the sign said "Slow children at play." You know that sign? And my mom would always say that her father would always see that sign and say, "Can't those children play any faster?" Now that was good for a couple of reasons, because that was what her father, my grandpa Izzy, would say. And I met him just a few times, but when I started telling stories, I took his name from mine. Joel Ben Izzy means Joel, son of Izzy. And he was from I grew up in suburbs of LA. He was from the faraway city of Cleveland, which was this mythical thing. But he actually had come through Galveston. There was a time when they got enough Jews coming through Ellis Island. They said, let's route them through Galveston, Texas. And so he'd come through Texas and gone up to Cleveland, but he would say, "Slow children at play," and I thought, oh, that's good for storytelling. Because in life, we play too fast. There's too much happening. Anybody notice? You turn on the news, oh my God, it's like drinking from fire hose through your ears. It's like crazy. So everybody just exhale, please. And get ready to play a little slower. The third sign that I always noticed was when we were riding on a road and it would say soft shoulder. You know that sign? And I'd say to my dad, I said, Dad, why does it say soft shoulder? And he says, oh, that's a wonderful thing that the California Highway Patrol does. They know that driving can make you tense, and a lot of tension is in your shoulders. And that's saying that the person in the back seat should give the person in the front seat a shoulder rub so that you do that. And you probably notice you got tension in your shoulders, even if you're not driving. Loosen up those shoulders, right? In terms of storytelling, what that means is that you wait for a story to come tap you on the shoulder. And all this time, you're going to be hearing a lot of storytellers, but I want stories to come tap you on the shoulder. And I want the people in those stories to come tap you on the shoulders. And we're going to fill up these chairs with those spirits, right? And they can come to the festival for free, sit right in these chairs. And I'll just show you how it works. You sort of sit quietly for a minute, loosen your shoulders, and I'm just going to see who comes and taps me on the shoulder. This is my Aunt Norma. May her memory be for a blessing. She died last year. As when she was younger, she was this crazy, wild character who she had Norma's notable needlework, and she discovered women's liberation, and sent a book to my mom entitled "I'm running away from home, but my husband won't let me cross the street." And I remember she said, you know, when I was young, I thought we had all these like crazy old relatives in my family. I was always amazed at these crazy old relatives, and now I'm one of them. But what I loved was this: she had dementia toward the end, but she had, and we all know people with dementia, and it manifests in different ways. She had a sort of a smiling dementia, and when she would ask something, there was a phrase I loved. She said, you know what? You're just going to have to tell me again, because these days my forgettery works better than my memory. And I love this idea that we have a forgettery and then a memory, and I think we also have a rememory. That is, things that pop up for us. So that's what's going to happen with these little bit of stories I tell. Like I say, this is an appetizer. There is somebody in your family, somebody you know of, that is the one they tell stories about. Could be several, whichever one comes. Just tap on the shoulder, give it a minute. And let's hear some names. Who's come tapping? Just call out the name without saying there. Who would it be? Anna? Ann Rose? Sam? Charlie? All right. This is great. So let's welcome to these chairs, right? And then I'll be doing the workshop Sunday on sort of finding your stories. Those stories are welcome to come in. Going to give it a minute. See who taps on my shoulder. Oh, it was Cousin Maury, who's called Uncle Maury. You know, my mom had dozens of cousins. She grew up in Cleveland, and she used to tell about Uncle Maury. There was a whole group of cousins, like 6 boys. Their mother died from a time when abortion was illegal, and the boys grew up in the Jewish Home for Orphans in Cleveland. One of them was Uncle Maury. And Uncle Maury was always this wild, sort of creative, curious spirit. He when he was a kid, he had looked out of the window one day at the Home for Jewish Orphans, and he looked at the tree, and he said, I wonder how many leaves there are on that tree. And he evidently went out, and he counted every single leaf on this tree. There were like 3,000. And he had this one, that one, this one, that one, this one. And later he married a wife who became disabled, but she wanted to fly. And he sort of rented out a warehouse and sort of created these wings and this cable so she could fly around it and have this feeling of flying. But when I went to see him years later, and I met him just a few times, when I went to see him years later, it was like for a Shabbat dinner. Shabbat is Friday night in Jewish tradition. And I went and sat down for him, and he served, there was challah, and he served then Campbell's chicken noodle soup. And he's sitting there eating soup, and he said, how do you like the soup? I said, well, it's pretty good. You know, it was chicken noodle soup. You know Campbell's chicken noodle soup, yeah? I said, it's pretty good. He said, yeah. He said, to me, it tastes kind of bitter. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'll tell you why. He said, about 10 years ago, I was sitting here having a can of soup, and as I read the label, it said, you know, and you picture the cans, right? The red and white cans. You know the cans, Andy Warhol cans, those soup. It said, as I read the label, it said, to improve the flavor, simmer on the stove for 5 to 10 minutes. He said, and I read that again and again, and it said, you know, that doesn't sound right. It says to improve the flavor. That's implying the flavor is not bad, like they didn't do their job when they put the soup in the can. I think it should say to bring out the flavor. So he said, so I sat down, I typed a letter, Dear Campbell's Soup, and I said, your label says to improve the flavor. I don't think you really mean improve. I think that you mean to bring out the flavor. Please heat on the stove for 5 minutes. If you wish to use my suggestion, all I ask for is a lifetime supply of Campbell's soup. He said, a month later, a truck pulled up. I have 200 cases of soup in my basement. I could have asked for money. I could have been a rich man today. What I got is soup. So to me, it's a little bitter. So I'm glad Uncle Cousin Maury showed up. Let's give just a moment of space for that relative of yours to really show up and get settled in there. See that relative, whoever that character is, just picture him for a moment, hear their voice. Let's welcome them just for 10 seconds of silence as they come and fill up these seats. And actually, you know what? There's probably a lot of them. They can fill these seats. They can float around because they may be dead. They do whatever they want. They can buy stuff at the store, right? So, but just give it 10 seconds. Let those spirits join us. All right. Do you feel them coming to join us? And I just got to ask, Joel, what's the sign for... I want to do that again. I love that. All right, that's my new favorite sign. Everybody, like, this is how you applaud sign language? Thank you. Oh, it's so fun. I love the name of the sign, Joel Hill, right? So let's just see who else comes, just a moment, right? Because we all got stories. And it's great to hear them, but it's great to have them rise up. Can you feel them bubbling up inside you? You think about these characters, then you think about them and think of one time. Let me just see who else shows up. Oh. You know what I love? There's relatives you know and things, but sometimes there's people you only meet once who like have a connection to. You're traveling, you bump into somebody, and you find a connection. Stories connect us, right? That's the idea. And I love stories where you somehow meet somebody and there's a connection. And I remember I was with a friend, Beth, who lives up in Alaska, but we were traveling, I met her in Amsterdam. I was flying from somewhere, she was flying to somewhere. We met up in Amsterdam. We traveled to her Uncle Leo. Her Uncle Leo lived in Calais. So Kellyanne, it was a sort of foggy night on the coast of France, and we sat up sort of talking around this little electric fire stove thing, and it was really pretty late. And this was years ago, and then Leo said, that was getting late, and he said, well, we better get to bed because we have to catch a train early in the morning. And Leo said, and I said, hey, how are we going to wake up? Because we got to get out to the train station early. And these days you just set your clock on your phone, right? But this was before anybody had phones. This was when a phone was something on a wall that you talked to, remember? And Leo said, oh, I got something for you. And he went into the closet and pulled out this old 70s clock radio, you know the kind, right? And as he gave it to us, he said, this reminds me. He said, this reminds me of something that happened in New York just after the war. He said, after the war, I was in New York, and I was staying in a friend's apartment. The friend was gone, but he said I could use the apartment. And it was my last night in New York. It was quite a time, after the war, and of course after World War II. He said, but as I was coming back, my last night in New York, I realized I had a problem. Because I had to wake up early in the morning to catch a flight and get to the airport. But I had no way of waking up. And I thought, what do I do? And again, there's ways now you could find to wake up. But he said I didn't know what to do. And the cab driver, as he was driving me to the apartment, I mentioned this to him. He said, what time you got to be up? He said, it's really early. He said, I got to be up at 5 a.m. And the cab driver, as he dropped me off, he said, where's your apartment? He said, I pointed, it's up there on the second floor. And the cab driver said, here, I got something for you. And he reached in his glove box, and he took out a roll of kite string and said, take this. And Uncle Leo said, well, why do I take that? He said, I get off work about 5 o'clock. I finish my shift. And I drive right by here. So what you should do is when you go to bed tonight, take that string, tie it around your big toe, drop the ball out the window, and when I come by at 5 a.m., I'll tug on it and wake you up. He said, and that's exactly what happened. 5 a.m., I felt a tug in my toe, and I pictured Leo, Beth's Uncle Leo, they're waving to the cab driver, and the cab driver smiling and waving back. And I never saw Uncle Leo again. He never saw the cab driver again. And yet we make these moments of connection in these stories. So as we do that, in joining the people, the relatives who've joined you, maybe there's somebody else you met just once somewhere. Give it a few seconds. I want to see this. All right, they're joining us too. And you know who else just came right in this little moment to me was a cousin of mine. Well, she was married to my cousin. Her name was Riva. And I was thinking about small things. We can get overwhelmed in the world with big stuff going on. Anybody noticed? Right? It's like kind of overwhelming. So it's those little things that are so sweet. And what I remember is my cousin Riva. And her father was in the military, and he was a scale calibrator for the Navy. Very precise job. He was an engineer. He had one of those mechanical pencils in his pocket, and he would take it out and write notes. And he would go onto these big ships, and he would calibrate their scales. Right? Super precise scale on these ships. And so one day she recalled going with him out to this big old ship, and they went to this sort of completely sterile room where they had this scale, and he calibrated it so it was perfect. And then he said, Riva, I want to teach you something. And he reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, pulled out a crisp dollar bill. And on this dollar bill, he put this dollar bill on the scale to see exactly how much it weighed. And then he picked it up, took out his mechanical pencil, and wrote her name, R-E-V-A, on the bill. And then, before giving it to her, he placed it back on the scale to see how much it weighed now. And the difference was the weight of the graphite from that pencil. And he gave her the dollar and said, Reva, the little things we do in life matter. Always. They told that story at her funeral. She died young. And yet, I remember those little things. One last one I have time for. Let's see who shows up. Remember, soft shoulders, everybody. Soft shoulders. Because the story's going to come tapping you on the shoulder all weekend long. You can share them in the swapping ground. You can come to my workshop, work on them. This is sweet and sad. This one came to my leg. It was my dog Herschel. Right? So let's welcome some of the animals who've been part of our life. My dog Herschel, may his memory be for a blessing. He was a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. You know the breed, like Lady from Lady and the Tramp? The first dog we ever had, cute as can be, dumb as a bag of hammers. and so happy and so bouncy and so light. He had no Jewish sensibility of anything. So we gave him a Jewish name of Herschel, right? To try to sort of help remind him of the Weltschmerz, that there's pain in this world and you got to be conscious of it. And it didn't work at all. He was just continually ongoing. So he was happy as could be, and he was obsessed. He never learned his name. The only thing he ever learned was to love and be affectionate, which he already knew, and the word B-A-L-L. He learned ball. He learned how to spell ball, B-A-L-L. We couldn't mention. We had to sign it, ball. Thank you. Ball. So loved him. He died as dogs do. That's time. And he came to me in a dream about 6 months ago. And there he was like running around happy as could be. I said, Herschel, glad to see you. How are you? And I realized there had been times that I'd been impatient with him because he'd been like so obsessed, and I would sort of pushed him away. I said, "Got enough with you and the ball." And I apologized to him. I said, Herschel, I know you came to the world with nothing but love. I just got to say, I'm sorry for the times I lost patience. And he said, that's okay. He said, but there is one thing I'm upset about. I said, what's that? He said, you got my ashes in a box on the piano. It's time for them to go back to the earth. I said, Herschel, you're exactly right. We've been meaning to do it for 5 years. Yeah, tell me where. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. He said, Woodbridge Metcalfe Grove. Very specific. I live by UC Berkeley campus. This is a redwood grove that sort of climbs on a steep hillside and canyon. I'd take him there walking and say, absolutely, where in Woodbridge Metcalfe Grove? He said, you know what, you go there and I'll let you know. And so the next day I went out with his box of ashes, and I sat and I meditated, and I could feel his spirit running around. And I thought, okay, where do I bury these ashes? And suddenly it came to me, so clear. I knew what I had to do. He said, go, get a tennis ball, throw it, and wherever it lands, that's where I want to be buried, with the ball. And that's exactly what happened. So as you spend this weekend hearing stories, may you remember, be here now because you are here. May you not play too quickly. May you have soft shoulders to hear those stories. May you welcome those presents of those who come and the stories, your stories that tap you on the shoulder. And at the end, may you get that ball you're looking for. And have a wonderful festival. Thanks so much for having me here, and thank you all for being here. And thank you as well to all those guests we welcomed as well. Let's welcome all them all here to Texas. Thank you.
While he's doing that, let's welcome Libby to the stage. Well, you know what appetizers do? They just kind of get your taste buds stirred up. So we thank Joel again for stirring up our taste buds and getting us ready for the rest. Thank you. Just as a reminder, tomorrow afternoon, Joel will be doing a special presentation on the Beggar King and the Secret of Happiness. You might put that on your list of things to do. Our next teller is Lyn Ford, an internationally recognized and award-winning fourth-generation Appalachian, did I say it? Appalachian storyteller. How, you might ask, did Lyn gain the distinction of being an Appalachian storyteller? Well, I'm glad you asked. Lyn shares folktale adaptations, spooky tales, and original stories rooted in her family's multicultural African-American Appalachian, thus Afro-Lachian heritage. Lyn is a teaching artist with the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education and a mentor for young authors. When asked what she would absolutely love for me to include in her introduction, guess what Lyn wants you to know? She is a proud and loving, I added that part, great-grandma for the 5th time. Give her a hand on that. And what Lyn knows for sure about storytelling is that it's heart-to-heart communication. So let us welcome to the stage Lyn Ford for a heaping helping of her home-fried tales.
Morning, y'all. I know some people might be concerned because this is Friday the 13th. And if you are so inclined, I can tell you from the region where I was born what you might do about that. Now, please do not say that this is an Appalachian ritual, because Appalachia is different from the north to the south and beyond, wherever folks go. And please do not say this is a Black Appalachian ritual or Afro-Latin ritual, because we ain't all the same either, okay? But I can tell you, if you want to make sure you have good luck on this day, make 13 wishes or say 13 prayers, whichever way you're so inclined. And if you want to get deep into that, write each wish or prayer on a leaf and burn it. I don't think the fire marshal would be too happy if we did that in here now. So just make those wishes. Make as many as you want, but at least 13 wishes or prayers. My family is prayerful and also wishes. And my husband and I met because of that. We had both been in relationships that you might call learning experiences. And I said a little prayer. If there's ever going to be anybody else in my life, you're going to have to show them to me because I am not looking. In the meantime, going through a similar situation, my future partner for life had said the same thing. If there's ever going to be anybody else in my life, you're going to have to send them to me because I'm not looking. The store where I did my grocery shopping closed, and I had to shop at Kroger's. The store that he managed transferred him to a different store that was just opening, a Kroger's. We met at Kroger's. Prayer answered, wish fulfilled. Come December 26th, we will have been married for 42 years. And our other wish was that the family we were blending together would get along very well. The children would grow up feeling like brothers and sister. Within 3 months, I was mama for everybody, he was daddy for everybody. But those two youngest ones, they were only 11 months apart, a girl and a boy, and they clashed. They looked enough alike that folks thought I had had twins, cute little kids, big round heads, big eyes, bright smiles. They hated one another. And I think it was because they were so close together in age and people thought they were twins that they were demanding that their own personalities be accepted. They would argue over nothing and anything. And one day, we were sending them to their rooms. I can't remember what the incident was that caused that, but our son said, "I'm running away from home." My daughter started toward the stairs to go to her room, and she stopped when he said that, and she turned and looked at him, and then she looked at us. What were we going to do? And I looked at my husband, and he looked at me, and we said, "Well, if that's what you feel you have to do." He was 6 years old. "We understand that you're upset. But remember when you run away that you're not allowed to cross the street." He said, "I know that." And he stomped up the steps, and my daughter just stood there, and she looked at him, and she looked at us. He came back down the stairs with a little bag packed, one of our overnight bags. And he headed toward the door. "I'm running away from home." And his father said, "Okay, but remember we love you, and you're not allowed to cross the street." We figured we would let him blow off some steam. We would watch him as he walked around the block. We figured eventually he would calm down enough that we could call him back into the house. But my daughter looked at him going out the door, looked at us again, and she said, "What is wrong with you?" Out the door went our youngest son, and he couldn't let the door slam because she grabbed the door. And he headed across the porch and down the steps, and she followed him. And he'd gone a few steps down the sidewalk when she caught up with him, grabbed him around his waist, tried to pick him up. They were the same size. Tried to carry him back to the house. His feet were dragging on the sidewalk, and she was grunting. She got to the porch steps. She lifted him up each step. She walked toward the door. We opened the front door. She walked him into the living room, set him down, and said, "Go to your room." And he did. And then she turned around and glared at us like we had not followed proper parental protocol. And then she went to her room. Well, after a short time, our son came back down the stairs, and he said, "Mommy, Daddy, I have to tell you something." We said, "Okay." He said, I wished for a baby sister. I always wished for a baby sister, but I thought when I got one, she'd be fresh." My baby sister's too old. And we said something like, we know and we understand, and it's very hard for both of you, but that's the way it is. And you might not be happy with one another now, but eventually you will get along. That didn't happen until they were out of high school. And now they are the best of friends. They watch over one another. All the children do. They watch over us. They have reversed the roles. They now boss us around. But on her birthday that summer, my daughter didn't want a party. She wanted to go to the park. She wanted to do some hiking. And we agreed to that. And we had a wonderful time. Then we came back to the house so that we could have cake and ice cream after our picnic and our hiking and our walking around. And when the cake was set out on the kitchen table, we sang happy birthday. The candles were lit. Our daughter inhaled to blow out her wishing candles. Her brother inhaled as if he was going to blow out the candles before she did. And she shoved him into a wall and blew out the candles as she closed her eyes and turned and glared at him. And he walked into the living room for a little while. And then she looked kind of disappointed as she looked back at the cake, and I thought about it. I asked, Bonnie, did you wish that your brother would disappear? She said, no, ma'am. But I'm tired of these wishing candles. I don't want any more candles on my cake because these wishing candles don't work. I wished he was a dog. And he's still here. You know that every one of our children has a dog now. Something that I think they wished for when they were little and just getting acquainted. But sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for. There was a rabbit. In the days when rabbits did not look the way they do today, he had short ears, long straight legs, long straight arms, a round full face, and a long fluffy tail. And he went to visit his grandmother. She always told him good stories, and she told him about something he had not yet seen. She told him about snow, and how beautiful the snow was, and how much fun it was to play in it, and how bright the sunlight was on fresh fallen snow. And after he'd heard that story, he went out and he started wishing for snow. He just kept wishing for snow and wishing for snow and wishing for snow. I live in Ohio. We wish for the snow to go. But he kept on wishing for the snow, and he wished so hard that suddenly tiny white flakes began to fall. More and more and more and more, and soon the ground was covered. And that little rabbit was a bit nervous, so he tried to hide under a willow tree, a tree that had no leaves at that time of year. And the snow rose and rose higher and higher. But he found that the snow was so firm he could step up on it. He could walk around in it. He could ball it up and throw it in the air, and the snow rose and rose and rose and rose as more snow fell and more snow fell and more snow fell. And after a while, Rabbit realized maybe he should have said how much snow he wanted to fall, because the snow had risen so high that Rabbit could sit on the branch of the willow tree. And that's what he did, because he couldn't see where his home was. And he figured, I'll just stay here. I'll just sleep here and try to figure out how to get home. And so he sat on a branch in the willow tree, leaned his back up against the trunk there, and soon he fell asleep. And while that little rabbit was sleeping, because his wish had been granted, the earth drew in all that snow. The rising sun melted what was left, and there was Rabbit, looking out at a greening world from a branch of a tree. And he was trying to figure out how to get down from that tree, and he was pretty nervous, so he wrapped his long tail around that branch, and he leaned down to see how far it was to the ground. And as he leaned down, his poor tail that had been so cold for so long snapped right off. And there was Rabbit falling toward the ground, saying what any sensible rabbit would say, "What?" And he landed so hard upon that ground that those long arms got pushed into his body so that he had the short arms that rabbits have to this very day. And those long, long legs, well, they broke and bent and became the legs that rabbits have to this very day. But there was no pain except for where the tail had been. Now he had a fuzzy little bunny bun, the one that rabbits wear to this very day. And he had fallen so quickly, fallen so hard, that his face hit the ground splat. How do you sign splat? Looks good. And he mashed that cute little round face into the face that rabbits have to this very day, kind of flat. And the lip is split. And now you know why. And if you don't believe this is true, just look at a rabbit. You can see what happened. And if that's not enough to let you know that the story is true, start looking at the willows around April and March sometimes. And you will see the remnants of his tail, fuzzy little pieces we call catkins, that appear before the leaves begin to show and grow. It's the rest of his tail up in the willow trees. And that should let you know that the story is true too. It's all there for you to see. And another way that you know it's true is you never hear a rabbit wish for anything. Because you got to be careful what you wish for. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to do that last one. My last little story is one that people claim came from here and there in various parts of Europe. It came into the Appalachian region, and there's a way to tell it there that comes from just after the Civil War. And that's about all I can tell you about it as far as its background. But there was a young man who was coming home from the war, coming back up the hills to his good wife and his good mother. And as he walked along, he thought of what he might say to them, because his hands had been wounded, and both were curled against his chest. As he made his way to the cabin, there was his good wife. And she reached out and embraced him. She wasn't worried about his hands. He was home, but she looked kind of sad. And he remembered that all she had asked for, all she had wished for, prayed for, was a child. And a child had never come. And then she brought him in to see his mother. And his mother reached out her arms, not knowing what had happened to his hands, because his mother had lost her sight. And she embraced him too as he came into the house and sat down at the table for the meal his wife had prepared, and his wife tied a napkin around his neck and spoon-fed him as if he was a baby. And he thought, how am I going to help my family? I was a carpenter before the war. Now my hands are useless. I can't make any money to help the family. And he thought about that all the rest of the evening. And he looked at his mother who could not see him. And he looked at his wife who still looked so sad. And he could not sleep. So he got up and he walked on out the cabin. And he walked toward the little pond where he used to sit and play and skip stones. And in the dimming light, he sat down upon a tree stump, and he heard something say, "Get up." And he looked around, he didn't see anything, but he heard, "Get up." And so he stood, and there was a frog, and he'd almost smashed that frog flat when he sat on it. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Frog. I apologize. I didn't see you there." And the frog said, "Obviously. But you were kind enough to apologize to me. And so I'm going to grant you a wish." See, I'm a wishing frog. That young man said, "A wishing frog? Like in the fairy tales? Well, I thought when you got wishes, you got 3 wishes. You only given me 1? Frog said, "You sat on me, boy. You ought to be glad I'm giving you 1 wish." Well, the young man thought about it. What might be his wish? What could he wish for? That would be the best thing. If he wished for his hands to work, his wife still would not have their child. And if he wished for a baby, his mother would not be able to see. And if he wished for his mother's sight, there would still be no grandbaby, and he could not use his hands. And so he said to that wishing frog, "Do you mind if I come back in the morning? I got to think on this before I make a wish." And the frog said, "Make it a good one. See ya, dayrise." So the young man went back to the cabin, and he thought the rest of the night. And when the sun began to rise, he made his way back to that pond. There was the wishing frog on the stump. And that young man said, Mr. Wishing Frog, I think I got the wish. And it's a good one. I wish that my mother could see my good wife holding our baby as she rocks in the rocking chair that I made with my 2 good hands. And the wish was granted. But if you go to that pond, a certain time in the morning, you will hear the frogs telling this story. Good wish. Good wish. Good wish. Good wish. Because you see, it was the very best wish of all. Thank you.
Thanks again to Lyn for that fine helping of tales. Let's hear it, everybody. Just a shout out again to some of the sponsors here. We are so grateful to them because they allow us to come here and partake of this. We want to acknowledge the Texas Commission on the Arts, the City of Denton, and then we have some individual folk here we'd like to shout out to as well. JB and Judy Keith, are you in the house? Well, we want to thank them anyhow. And Tim Couch, and we'll acknowledge some of the others later on. We thank you again for that. Our next teller, the next teller we'll welcome to the stage is Alton Chung. Did I say it right? I practiced that. Alton is a Japanese-Korean storyteller who grew up with the superstitions and the magic of the Hawaiian Islands. Mix together the magic and superstition of the islands with the history of Japan and Korea, and you get finely spun stories from a man rooted in a very unique culture and a one-of-a-kind perspective. Not only does he breathe life into traditional Asian folktales with sensitivity and deep connection, but he can also touch into the fire of ancient Hawaiian legends and tell them with passion and respect. What Alton wants you to all know about him is that he is a story scout for the Spooked podcast, and he's actively looking for folks with true first-hand experiences with the paranormal. If you got it, he's looking for you. And who are willing to tell their stories on a podcast. If you have a story, he'd be happy to listen. So tug his coattail and tell him, I got one. What he knows for sure about storytelling is that everyone is a storyteller. Stories are how we relate to each other, how we remember things, and how we make sense of the world. We welcome Alton to the stage to help us make sense.
Thank you very much. I have a couple stories for you. This story comes from China. It's called The Luminous Pearl. Once, the great Dragon King of the Eastern Sea had a problem. You see, he had a very clever daughter named Li Mei, and he was having trouble finding an equally clever husband for her, because he rejected any suitor who came by. Too short, too tall, too fat, too thin, too lazy, too serious. Daughter, what are you looking for in a husband? Oh, Father, I don't need anyone who's rich or anyone who's too important for himself. No, I'm just looking for a man who is honest, compassionate, and brave. Honest, compassionate, and brave? Don't want much, do you, daughter? Well, he searched and searched and searched until at last he did find a young man who was known for his compassion, his bravery, and his honesty. But to test this young man, the great Dragon King sent this young man a dream. This young man named Chen, and he lived at the bend of the river, in the shadow of a tall mountain. And when the dream came, he dreamed that there was a beautiful woman who was answering her phone down by the river. And he waited till her to answer the phone, because he was calling long distance, you know. So anyway, he dreamed that she was down by the river, and it was so real. I mean, she was beckoning him to come to the river and answer the phone. But it was so real, he woke up. And so he went to his brother, you know, told his brother Lee all about this dream. Now his brother Lee and he were identical twins. They looked exactly the same. But Lee wasn't nearly as nice as his brother Chen. No. Lee was always jealous of his brother. Now he was jealous of his dream. For if the dream was real, then Chen would have his girlfriend and he would have no one. Oh, brother, you know, dreams are just rubbish, brother. You don't pay attention to them. Just go back to sleep, brother. So Chen did. But then Lee, he got dressed very quietly. And where did he go? He went down to the bend of the river. But Chen was sleeping, and the dream came again and again. There was that beautiful woman down by the bend of the river, beckoning to come down to the bend of the river. And it was so real, he woke up again. And he looked around. His brother Lee was gone. So Chen got dressed, and he went down to the bend of the river, and he walked down, and who did he ever see? Yeah, his brother Lee sitting there looking around. And Chen was about to go and call out to his brother, but something amazing happened. Moonbeams cascaded down from the heavens and illuminated the entire middle with this strange silvery light. Shooting stars arced across the sky, adding their own shimmering brilliance to the scene. And then suddenly before the two brothers was this beautiful woman, the woman from his dream. They didn't know that she was the Princess Lyn. They didn't know that she was the daughter of the great Dragon King. They just saw this gorgeous woman, and both brothers were smitten by her. And Lyn looked at them, and she couldn't tell them apart. So she said, which one of you is honest, compassionate, and brave? Well, I am.
Oh, yeah. Me too. Yeah, very, very honest. I'm very honest. And compassionate. Oh, very compassionate. And honest. Oh, yeah, honest as the day is long and brave. I'm so brave. Yes, I'm brave. That's me.
Well, she couldn't tell them apart, so he said, all right, well, here. Whoever can bring me the luminous pearl from the great Dragon King of the Eastern Sea shall become my husband. I will be here again when the moon rises over the mountain. And she gave them 2 magic fans to help them on their journey. Well, Lee didn't want to lose to his brother, and he knew that his brother was going to be heading off, and so he ran back home. But Chen wanted to know more about this woman, so he talked to her. The more he talked to her, the more he liked her, the more he liked her, the more he talked. And they talked till it was almost dawn. And he said, well, you better get off on this quest. And so he went back to the house. By the time he got back to the house, his brother Lee had taken their only horse and had taken every scrap of food there was in the house. So Chen had no choice except to start walking to the Eastern Sea, eating whatever fruits he could find on the trees, drinking water from the river, and sleeping under bushes. Well, Lee on his horse came down to this village. This village had just experienced a huge flood. People were stunned. And Lee stood there long, watching these people, and he asked, oh, what had happened? Oh, the river had overflowed its banks, and our crops are flooded, our village is flooded. If we're going to be desperate, we're going to starve unless we can get the Golden Dipper from the Great Dragon King to help clear our land of the water.
Oh, Great Dragon King, eh? Maybe I'm going to go see the Great Dragon King, and maybe I can give this Golden Dipper for you, but you got to help me. You got to help me out here. Can you give me a boat so I can get down the river?
All the people were overjoyed. They said, yes, of course. Go along you a boat. And Lee jumped in the boat and went down the river. A few days later, Chen showed up, and the people were still kind of like salvaging what they could. And so, even though he was tired and he was hungry, he helped them as best he could. And he heard them keep talking about this Golden Dipper, the Great Dragon King that can help save their land. Said, oh, well, I'm going to go see the Great Dragon King, and maybe I can get this Golden Dipper for you. Oh, the people were overjoyed. Another person willing to help them said, well, we'll loan you a boat. And Chen looked around and saw that they needed the boat more than he did. He said, no. I'm a good swimmer. You can keep your boat. I'll be back. And he walked to the river and he dove in and began swimming to the Eastern Sea. By the time he got down to the mouth of the Eastern Sea, a huge storm was raging. Lightning flashed, thunder crashed, and waves were blowing the tops off the waves. And in this huge tumult, huge waves were pounding the shore. And Chen just stood there watching all this, and he watched up to the river, to the edge, and saw the sea crashing. And out of the corner of his eye, he saw motion. And there, huddled against the cliff face, was his brother Lee. He was so terrified, he couldn't even move. He'd sat there for days, too afraid to even approach the ocean. But Chen pulled on that magic fan and began waving it at the waves, and the water parted, creating a path for him to get down to the bottom of the Eastern Sea. And Lee, seeing this, tagged along behind his brother without saying a word. Well, both brothers went down to the very bottom of the Eastern Sea, and there they had reached the kingdom of the Great Dragon King. And there they had this golden gates with seaweed hung like green bunting and rare seashells decorating this golden gate. And there at the gate to meet them was the Great Dragon King himself.
Oh, boys, I'm so happy to see you. Come. Enter my kingdom, come. And I will take you to my treasury.
And they followed this Great Dragon King, and he took them to the treasury. There are 2 huge sea dragons guarding the treasury of the Great Dragon King. With a nod of his head, the sea dragons turned and moved aside, and there was an enormous door fashioned from a huge clamshell decorated with pearls. He said, now, boys, you may come into my treasury. Each maybe select one item as a gift from me to you. And so the doors were open, and inside were all the treasures. The treasures gleamed from the bottom of the ocean and from ships that had sunk at sea. Well, Lee immediately went to this huge basket of pearls, and he began going through all the pearls, looking for the one that was shining the brightest pearl, and he finally found one pearl. Oh, it was gorgeous. It shone in the light like a mirror, like a beacon of a ship at sea. This was his
prize, and he put that in his pocket. And he looked around and he noticed that they were gems and jewels and gold and all kinds of art objects. And he tried to get a handful of some of those jewels and put it in his pocket, but a sharp-eyed dodger saw him and ushered him onto the treasury. Well, Chen was walking around. He saw the pearls, he saw the jewels, he saw the gold, and amongst all this treasure, he saw the Golden Dipper. And he selected that to be his treasure. But by the time he was ready to leave the treasury, Leaf was already gone. And the Dragon King felt so bad for Chen, that he personally escorted him to the edge of his kingdom. Well, Lee made it back to that village. And the people were overjoyed to see him. They said, "Oh, were you able to get the Golden Dipper from the Great Dragon King?" "Oh, no, hard-hearted. The Dragon King was very hard-hearted. No, I couldn't get the Dipper. He wouldn't loan it to me. Sorry, gotta go." Jumped on his horse, rode away. Well, the people were disappointed. A little bit later on, Chen came and presented the Golden Dipper to the people and said, "You may borrow this as long as you return it to the Great Dragon King." And the head man, he took that Golden Dipper, he filled it up from the water that was in the fields, and he walked over the river and poured it into the river, and soon all the rest of the river water flowed out of the field, flowed out of the village, and poured back into the river. And there, on the banks of the river, was an enormous oyster. They said, "Oh, we have not seen an oyster like this in generations." And they opened it up, and inside they found a black pearl. The head man went up to the Chen and said, young man, you've helped us save our village. Please accept this as a token of our appreciation and our thanks." Well, Chen took that black pearl. It wasn't the luminous pearl of the Great Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, but it was very nice. And he put it in his pocket and he thanked the people. And he made his way home. Well, by the time Chen got back home, it was that night of the full moon. And he and his brother were in that clearing, and they're looking up at the stars. And then once again, in the middle of the night, all those moonbeams cascaded down from the heavens, illuminating that whole clearing in its straight silvery light. Shooting stars arced across the sky, adding their own shimmering light to this whole scene. And then, once again, there was Li Mei, standing there, that beautiful woman. And both brothers bowed to her and presented their pearls to her. And she said, "Oh, when the moon rises above that mountain, we shall see who has the luminous pearl of the Great Dragon King of the Eastern Sea." Well, Lee was very confident. He had gotten the pearl, the best pearl from the treasury. And so he presented his pearls. He was very happy. And so she said, "Look at his pearl first." And so when the moon rose, Li Mei held up his pearl and something changed. It seemed dull and lifeless. Lee was upset. He grabbed that pearl out of her hand and spit out, shined it up and held it up, but no, it was still dull and lifeless. But when she held up Chen's black pearl, it began to pulse and glow and got brighter and brighter, and soon it became so bright it was like the light of 10,000 suns, and Lee had to turn away. And when the light finally faded, and he could see, he looked around, and he was alone in the clearing. Chen and Li Mei were married, and they moved down and lived in that palace at the bottom of the Great Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, and both of them lived long and happy lives, and like all couples in fairy tales, they lived happily ever after. Another time, one really short story. This story comes from Korea. It's called Tiger, Baby Rabbit, and the Fish. And Korean, they always begin stories with Yanal, do yanare. Once there was Tiger. He was hungry. It was the middle of winter. He had nothing to eat. He came out of the frozen forest, and who did he happen to see? But Baby Rabbit. "Oh, Baby Rabbit, I'm so hungry. I'm going to have you for lunch." "Oh, Mr. Tiger, do you like fish?" Fish? "Yes, I just happen to have some, and I know where we can catch as many fish as you can possibly eat." I'm really hungry. Okay, show me. So Baby Rabbit took Tiger to the middle of that frozen river. He cut a hole in the ice and said, "Now, Tiger, all you gotta do, the fish, this is when fish are hungry. They're looking for something to eat. You put your tail in the water, and the fish will come down. I'll chase the strip, the fish downstream. They'll see your tail, they'll bite onto it. All you have to do is when you have enough fish have bitten on your tail, you just lift it up and you can eat as many fish as you can possibly catch." Oh, I like that. That's good. First, you gotta, because the fish is so subtle, you gotta close your eyes and feel your tail. Okay, put your tail in the water. Okay, tail in the water, tail in the water. Oh, go. Okay, tail in the water, okay. All right, I'm going upstream, I'll chase the fish down. So Rabbit jumped up to the rocks in front of the upstream and said, "All right, Tiger, you ready?" Yeah, ready. Tail in the water, yeah, tail in the water. Close your eyes, okay, eyes closed, okay. And Rabbit would be going, shoot fish. Jumping from rock to rock, going, shoot fish. And when he got to the edge of the frozen river, Rabbit took off in the forest. Never came back. Meanwhile, Tiger's going, go. 6 o'clock at night. Tail's not heavy enough. No. Wait. 9 o'clock. God, I'm getting hungry. I can taste the fish now, but no, a little bit longer. Midnight. Okay, I'm really hungry. Gotta eat now. Time to eat. Tiger was so greedy. Tiger had waited so long that the ice had closed around his tail. And he was stuck fast in the middle of that river. He was out there all day long until the sun rose and the ice melted and he could free his tail. And all that while he began thinking, and he decided that he would have nothing to do with Baby Rabbit ever again.
Thanks again to Alton, all right? Yeah. And since we began this concert with appetizers, it's only fitting that we should end with dessert, correct? And for this final course, we'll call it dessert, let us welcome to the stage Liz Weir. Liz is one of Ireland's most respected storytellers who has shared stories on 5 continents, from pubs, prisons, and hospital rooms, to Royal Albert Concert Hall in London, to New York's Grand Central Station. And what was it that Liz wanted me to be sure and tell you? That she has been telling stories for 50 years, and the part that she is most proud of is that she started doing so as a librarian. Let's hear it for the librarians in the house. What Liz knows for sure about storytelling is that it has a power to build community. When I asked Liz what she would be telling, she said, don't know yet what I'm telling, but you can be sure it will be a folk tale, probably Irish, as that's what I mainly tell. And how blessed we are to get to hear Liz Weir tell us an Irish folk tale, perhaps, right now and right here. Let's welcome Liz to the stage.
Last year. It's lovely to see some of the same people. Lovely to see some other people as well. Hello. Guess what? I'm not going to start with a folk tale. You can blame Job and Izzy because somebody came tapping on my shoulder and I have to tell you about her. Is that all right? Then I'll tell you a folk tale. So last Sunday, 8th of March, was International Women's Day, and I was telling stories in Belfast, a very posh hotel. It was lovely. But that woman kept coming and tapping on my shoulder, and that was my mother. She's long gone now, but I thought I'd share a story, my favourite story. Kids always say, what's your favourite story? Actually, this is my favourite story. I'm known normally for folk tales. In Ireland, we don't tell personal stories that much, in performance. So I want to tell you this one, and then I'll follow up the folk tale. Long before I was born, our family lived in what was then called the northwest frontier of India. It's the border nowadays between Pakistan and Afghanistan, where people are still fighting. My father was a career soldier. When I was growing up, he was long out of the army, but I heard all these stories about India, mongoose, thieves that coated themselves with grease. They could steal the blanket off your bed, but you couldn't touch them because it'd slip away. All these exciting stories, and I go, I never get to go anywhere. I changed that, but that's not the story. The story really begins when my mother, my father, my sister, and my two brothers left Rawalpindi, up in what's now Pakistan, came down by train to what was then called Mumbai. They boarded ships to come back to Northern Ireland. The regiment was returning home. They were on the Indian Ocean, and the date was September 1939. I'm sure you know what happened then. The Second World War broke out, and they're sitting in big white ships in a convoy in the middle of the Indian Ocean, sitting ducks for German planes coming over. So the ships pulled into Mombasa in Kenya to have camouflage paint on. And while the men were camouflaged in the ships, the women and the children had picnics on the beach, palm trees, coconuts, silver sand. But my mother realised that the life jackets they had for the children were too big for my brother Keith, who was 2.5. And she had a friend who had a baby 6 months old. So what did she do? She did what my mother always did, made do and mend. She had her old 1925 Singer sewing machine, and she made 2 life jackets for these children out of cork and nappies. Diapers, you call them, I think. They were made of cloth, of course, in those days. When they were back on the ships again, our family went on a ship called the Britannia. The other family went on a ship called the Yorkshire. And again, if you know your geography, and you're bound to know it, we've been seeing it on the news all week. They went up through the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean, past Gibraltar, past Spain, past Portugal. And when they were off the coast of France, my brother Billy saw a torpedo shoot through the water and bang! Hit the Yorkshire, which exploded and sank very quickly. Our family were standing on deck, my mother in her hat and gloves, nice touch, holding the 3 children. And she said to herself, if these children went into the water, they're going to die. It was November, hypothermia. Well, their captain switched off the engines because the German U-boat, the submarine, was going underneath listening. But obviously you know I'm here, so you know they made it home. They made it all the way back to Northern Ireland, where my mother stood in Jail Square in Armagh, and all her possessions were in army boxes around her. She said, if ever I get a roof over my head, I'll never leave it again. And she stayed in her house in Ballymena from 1940 until she died at 92. So I love that story, but the best bit comes when they heard all the news about all the people who'd not survived. And in those days there was only one place to go and see the news. Where was that? Hathi News. And there on the screen in front of them in Armagh, my mother said she saw the survivors being brought up, and she saw, even though her friend she'd heard had died, she saw a man carrying a wee baby in a bundle, in a life jacket that she had made. Now that, as I say, was my favourite story, until about years later, when my mother turned 90. They had one of these big nights they have in Northern Ireland. World War II, what was it really like? One of those boys and their toys nights, you know, one of those nights? So you had people dressed in German uniforms, Italian uniforms, lots of American uniforms, British uniforms. They had tanks, they had all of this. And I'd been hired to MC the evening. My daughter is a journalist, she was there reporting. And we thought, well, bring Nanny. Nanny liked men in uniform, always did. So we brought her, we plunked her in the front row, and we thought, what could go wrong? Nothing, of course, until I got to the bit where I said, we had a distinguished panel of guests, and I go, excuse me, oh no. I heard the English accent, it could only be one person, my mother. So she started questioning them. The Belfast Blitz, why were there no shots fired? Oh no, went 3 questions. My daughter's going, that's my nanny. You think we'd be proud, but we're embarrassed. But the BBC were there, and they said, who's this woman? It's my mother. Doris comes back. Could we come and interview her? Yes, she said. She made cakes. So they came and they interviewed her. You can put it on. It's on the internet. Nell Martin, BBC, Your Place in Mine, up at Weir. You could hear her voice in those days. You can't hear it anymore. And about, a year later, we got an email in from a Mrs. Olive James. She said, I was that baby. My mother was drowned, and my father and I were brought to Bordeaux. And I was able to tell my mother that shortly before she died. So if you've got stories, please share them, so that your stories will go on and on and on. Thank you. Thank you, Joel, for bringing my mother into this. So the sort of story I like. I love folk tales. And I'm very fortunate. I've been telling stories, as you heard, for a very long time. And many of the people who've shared stories with me are no longer with us. But every time I tell one of their stories, they're with me. They're still with me. And one of my favourite tellers was a woman called Sheila Quigley. She was a primary school teacher in the city of Derry. And when she retired, she said to me, I've lost my audience. I said, what do you mean you've lost your audience? She said, well, I'm not teaching anymore. I said, adults like stories. I've never done that. Well, by the time we'd finished, I'd trailed her all around the country. We went to Scotland telling stories. She was at the Cape Clear Festival. She went everywhere. Fantastic storyteller. And just last night, when I came back, before I went to sleep, I played a radio program that I did in 1991, and I got to hear Sheila's voice, which is why I'm bringing it to you today. There was a family who lived up in Donegal. Mother and father and 6 children, just a year apart. We call it like steps and stairs. Hardly any distance between them. And when the oldest girl, Moya, was just about 8 years old, and the baby just a few weeks old, the father died, or was then called consumption. We know it was TB. The young woman nearly went out of her mind with grief, and how was she going to manage? But the neighbours rallied round and they kept the farm going. Kept it going as long as they could, but when Moya grew up to be a young woman of maybe 14, it was obvious she had to go off to the hiring fair. I'm sure you know about those. In Ireland, certainly, there was usually a square or a big street, and any young man or young woman looking for work, and sometimes older people as well, would go there and stand with a bundle under their arm. A farmer would come and say, there's a boy there who'd be good at ploughing. Oh, there's a girl there, she'd be great at milking cows. And you'd go off with a complete stranger for 6 months at a time. And if you didn't stay your 6 months, you went for 5 months, 3 weeks, 4 days, you wouldn't get a penny, not a penny piece. So Moya went, she stood there, she was wee and thin, you wouldn't have picked her automatically. And the day wore on. And finally, a farmer and his wife came, and they put her up in a cart, and they took her way off to West Donegal, far from home. It was a long little farmhouse with a thatched roof. They brought her in. There was a step ladder up to what we call a half loft. That was her room. When she went up there was a bed and a chair and a window looking down. But if any of you have ever had to share a room with a brother or sister, to have a space of your own. She knew immediately the woman of the house was very kind. The woman of the house showed her how to do all the chores. She was a good worker. But the man of the house, very different. The man of the house, heavy-handed. If he came home with drink taken, his temper was so bad he would take it out on his wife and the girl. And both women spent their whole time walking on eggshells, not to get him angry. Moya kept her head down, she did her work. Everything went well until the winter wore on. And one night, the man hadn't come home from his work. The wife had gone out to do some messages or shopping. And a big snowstorm had come on. They hadn't come home. She had the meal already on the table, neither master nor mistress. What could she do? She covered up the food, banged up the fire. You never let an Irish fire go out. And up she went to her bed. She was only in bed for about 15 minutes when she heard the downstairs door crash open, man of the house shouting, roaring, "Where's the woman in this house? What sort of house is this? No food for a hungry man." And she heard him, to her horror, coming towards the stepladder up to her room. And although she was young and a very innocent girl, she knew she wasn't safe. She pushed open the window and she jumped down into the snowy yard, her bare feet, her long white nightdress, running through the snow, not knowing where she was running. All of a sudden, she was snatched off the ground, and it was a man on a horse who put a cloak around her and said, "Don't worry, child, you're safe with me." And whether it was his voice, or her heart pounding, or the movement of the horse, she set her head to his breast and fell asleep like a wee baby. When she opened her eyes, it was daylight. She felt herself being lifted down. When she turned around, horse and rider had vanished. And there in front of her were the 2 gateposts of her family farm. She ran up to the door and hammered and fell into her mother's open arms. "Moya, what happened? How'd you get home?" Moya told the story the way I'm telling all you people. And her mother listened and said, "Moya, the man on the horse, did you notice anything about his left hand?" And she said, "Well, yes, Mother. He had a scar like a crescent moon on the back of his hand." And her mother said that, "Daughter dear, was your own dead father." I'm sure you're ready for your lunch, but I want to just do one very, very short story. Last Saturday, I went to a memorial service of a really good friend. I'll name his name, Roy Arbuckle. You see, they're all tapping my shoulder. Joel, thank you very much for this. And I was asked to do a story. It was a great honour. So this is a story many of you may know, but I love it. And actually, well, there's a whole story, but I'm not going to tell you that. You'll be here all day. Ask me afterwards. A man was visiting a strange land. He'd never been there before. He was looking at all the sights. And as he was coming through the countryside, he saw a white picket fence around a grassy hill. He opened the gate, went in, and he saw piles of stones all over the hill. And each pile of stones had a name and an age. 3 years, 4 months, 5 days. 7 years, 6 months, 2 days. 9 years, 1 year, 3 years. What? This is awful. And he came out and there was an old man sitting on a wall and he said, "Excuse me, are you from around here?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What's happened here?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "This is a graveyard." He said, "Yes." "What's happened to your children?" "What do you mean?" 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. Was it a fever, a plague? What happened? The man laughed. He said, "No, no." And from around his neck, he brought a string, and on the end of that string was a tiny book. He said, "No, when we're born here, we're given these books. And as we go through our life, whenever we have a special moment, a child is born, we fall in love. We spend time in the company of good friends. We write those special moments of time in the book. And then when we leave this earth, we don't put the number of years on our gravestones. No, no. We add up all those special moments of time. So I'm hoping my friend Roy and many of your friends have all their moments of time added up. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all. I hope you feel that you've been well served, well fed, that you're nice and full, but with room enough for just a little bit more. Let's hear it again for our tellers